What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Only Football Podcast. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed your Juneteenth, your Father's Day. I know I enjoyed mine. I went camping out here in the Olympics, and it was just gorgeous. I mean, no cell phone reception, waterfalls. I mean, a full blown rainforest. It was beautiful, and out here, it's the sun hasn't even well, it's setting now, but it is still pretty easy to see out there. So enjoying the long days over here on the West Coast. I hope that this podcast finds you guys well. And if you're sitting here and you're watching this and you're thinking, this podcast looks so much better, whether it's the camera, whether it is the microphone, you would be correct. We are upgrading our equipment here, prepping for the new year. The 2023-24 NFL season is going to be a total ball. Many different cities, many different games, endless amount of content for, I mean, there's a storyline for everything, and plus, for a person that's never really been to many NFL stadiums, it's gonna be a blast. I have actually been really inspired the other day at work. I pretty much had nothing to do, so I just sat there and went through all of the different, cities that Tom Grassi has currently been to, and I had a really good time going through them and seeing we got Bill in the chat, by the way. Bill, how are you, man? Good to see you again. Hope you're doing well. But just going through the different cities and just looking at all the cool stuff he's getting an opportunity to do, whether it be making an appearance on the Pat McAfee show or getting to wear the Super Bowl rings for the New England Patriots, jumping through a table in Buffalo, stopping at the St. Jude Hospital. It's been pretty inspiring. And usually there's been a couple times where, and if you're a content creator, you probably know what I'm talking about, where you may have an idea and then somebody else has a similar idea. And in the world of content creating, it's easy to be upset or discouraged because what you are now trying to do it won't necessarily be unique. But and I know Tom Grassi is like this. I take another approach where I think that we should, as content creators, especially specifically in the NFL community, fully embrace each other because whether we had 100 or 1,000 people doing the same thing, because everybody is unique and different, it's going to be completely different experiences, and that will translate into different content. So at first, when I saw he was doing the 30 for 30, I thought, oh my God, because I was getting ready to go to a lot of stadiums. It wasn't going to be 30 and 30, but I just thought it was funny because earlier he released a rap song, Stan, with basically Aaron Rodgers leaving, and I had an idea to do a rap song for the schedule releases. So wherever Tom Grassi goes with his creativity, I find myself in a nearby location, usually late to the party, but um, it's all love, and I'm just so happy for him. So yeah, I mean, upgrading this studio was a real pain in the ass. And I'll just say it because I am not a person that is good with technology. That's just not my cup of tea. Speaking of cup of tea, got a cup of tea right now. Now, this microphone is so good, you could probably hear me take a sip out of this coffee. Tea. This is a killer microphone. Cost entirely too much money, but I looked at it as an investment because I do believe that if people are just clicking on these videos, they're just passerbys, they don't live here at the channel. I do think that it's important to people that the video quality is good, the cameras sound good. So I do feel a responsibility to get better at technology, and that's what I've had to do. Believe it or not, I've wanted to have this exact setup that I have right now for since the beginning of starting this channel. It's just taken me this long to figure out how to. So we finally made it. Bill says it definitely sounds way better. Thank you for the feedback because it's a little risky the first time jumping out there with different equipment, but without further ado, let's talk football. So, we've been talking about how there are teams that have a Super Bowl window. And if you see my shirt right now, Joe Burr, I wore this specifically because it ties into what we're going to talk about today. And it's the same thing with the headline. It's about a sense of urgency. And when we talk about football, we are always talking about a window, right? We live in windows, right? So it's like we make our playoff picture. Basically, we pull the teams that we believe are in a window. That usually means they have a great roster and they're just a quarterback away. And somehow they obtain a quarterback in the offseason, like the Jets, or they're a team that's had a good roster, but they have a star quarterback, and that quarterback is on a long-term contract, Patrick Mahomes. Um, but there's only like it's the same thing with Tom Brady. Like when Tom Brady did his thing, like yes, there was Peyton Manning, there were other great quarterbacks, but Tom Brady was really one of one. When it was all said and done, I would say it would be like a race that starts and somebody has, let's say, a 1 minute lap lead, but after 10 laps, it turns into 10 minutes. He just pulls away from the group towards the end. By the way, we have Steve in here. Konnichiwa, Steve. Glad to have you in here, man. Tom Brady definitely pulled away. He's in a league of his own, but we do have Josh Allen, okay? And Josh Allen is the first person on this list. And we talked a little bit about the Bills. I think that was probably 2 months ago, or maybe a month and a half ago. And we were talking about the fact that we kind of gave up on the Bills. We haven't said it out loud, but the NFL community really went all in on last year. And for good reason. The game that happened the year prior with the Kansas City Chiefs was the best playoff game I've ever seen in my life. Had the Broncos beaten the Ravens in 2013 or 2012, that would have been the best game. But they lost, so it's the worst game. But that game was incredible, and we had no reason to believe that if Josh Allen would have had the ball one more time, he would have scored. And they implemented a brand new overtime rule for the postseason because of how many people felt like they were robbed of a miraculous back and forth. So, we all went in, right? And they had the best defense, and I believe they had the best offense for most of the year. So, it felt like they were going to win the Super Bowl. And then they got to the playoffs and they get destroyed by the Bengals. And it's almost like we kind of felt like we were tricked, right? It's like, gotcha, right? And then you're thinking, man, why did I believe in Buffalo? After all, this is a team that went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and lost every time. Okay. It's not a reputation that is necessarily good, even though going to the Super Bowl is an incredible feat. It's definitely overshadowed when you lose every time. And I guess we just thought that they had the team that could get this done. But they haven't, man. They haven't gotten it done. But I was proposing that we remember that if Buffalo would have had their crap together, playing their best ball late in the season, Buffalo could have won the Super Bowl. They had the best defense. Von Miller gets hurt. They lose some pieces. Sean McDermott is a defensive minded head coach, offensive minded head coach. They run the league right now pretty much. So I feel like if you get a healthy Von Miller and you have a mad Josh Allen, that anything is possible with this team. And I still do believe that, even though that they may have the best division in the NFL. This is what the NFL had to say about it. Okay. And they ranked urgency from a 1 to a 10. And the Bills are at a 10.0, which is kind of funny in a way because it just shows that people are never satisfied until you win a Super Bowl. It's not like, the Browns have, that I feel like the Browns should be on this list because they, spent all this money on a quarterback and they missed the playoffs. I know he was suspended, but Buffalo is at a 10 because I think the fear, before reading this article, I think the fear is that this team is not going to be able to be held together. And before the pieces start crumbling, they have to win that title before they start losing important people at important positions. But this is my caveat too. If I had to push back against this, here is my biggest push. Joe Burrow said, my Super Bowl window is my entire career because I will be the quarterback, right? And that is kind of true. Patrick Mahomes' Super Bowl window will be his entire career. There will not be a year where Patrick Mahomes is, unless he drastically downfalls, I mean, like Russell Wilson style, there will not be a year that we just go, Patrick Mahomes is not, going to be, he's going to be a top 4 favorite to win the Super Bowl every year for the next decade. He is the equivalent to Tom Brady. Okay. Now, Josh Allen we consider him one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He can run the ball. He's physical. He can pass. He can win a shootout with Patrick Mahomes. Even though he lost, he showed that he was capable of winning. So why does Buffalo have a Super Bowl window closing, right? My pushback would be as long as they have Josh Allen under center, unless they have some doubts about who Josh Allen is, you could say their best chances of winning a Super Bowl are this year. But I would say the Jets is way more urgent because Aaron Rodgers has 2 years, right? That's it. And they just, they did everything they could to get him. That was to win a Super Bowl. That's the most urgent team. Okay. Josh Allen is a young man. He's going to be the quarterback for a long time. So let me read this now. The Bills have been knocking on the door for a while now. 4 straight trips to the playoffs, each running short of the Super Bowl. The 13 seconds lost to the Chiefs in 2021 divisional round was pure pain for a franchise that's no longer a stranger to heartbreak. But last postseason's home thumping at the end of the Bengals was somehow more dispiriting. Is Buffalo's once wide open Super Bowl window suddenly closing? Playing a wildly improved AFC East, there's a huge amount of urgency facing the Buffalo operation entering 23. Look no further than recent drama surrounding Stefon Diggs as example of potential cracks in the structure. Pressure can do that to even the most solid of foundations. And I'm going to hit some of these comments now. Sorry, when I go to read the article, I have to jump off the screen, so I couldn't see some of these. But Bill said, Stefon not satisfied. LOL. Yep. And same thing was said about Dan Marino. So about the Super Bowl window being his entire career. So the Stefon Diggs thing is, I think there's something there, right? It does seem from afar. And if you've watched Hard Knocks, you know that teams do their hardest to try to internalize everything or keep everything in the house. They don't want leaks. But Stefon Diggs' attitude during that loss was almost as if, and me and Rick, we went back and forth about this. Because I do believe that Stefon Diggs is a great teammate, but my coach told me this when we were competing. He told me that I was the leader of our team, and he told me this was about 14 days ago. He told me that when things are going really well or things are going really bad, that he needed me to stay level-headed, like in the middle, and don't get too high, don't get too low, because the rest of the team is going to be looking at me to see how they should feel. Now, that is something that just because I grew up watching football and, studying players, I already knew that, but I didn't see myself as I don't know. I try not to it sounds arrogant, but I knew that I was probably the best player in the team, but there had been people there longer than me. So I didn't really look at myself as the person that people were going to look for as an emotional leader of the team or anything like that. Somebody may have to tell Stefon Diggs that he is the emotional leader of the Bills. He is. Your big personality players, they're going to be the ones that are driving the cameras. They're going to be the ones that people are watching to see. Stefan Diggs, the Minneapolis Miracle. I mean, he is all from that moment. That play is in the Hall of Fame forever. He's a legend. And I'm not saying he's Jerry Rice, but I am saying that he has a unique place in the Hall of Fame already. And I do think that sometimes it does seem that there are players that don't know that they don't, not to sound cliche, but they don't know their role, right? Because Stefan Diggs throwing his helmet around, when Stefan Diggs is happy, it really does feel like the whole Buffalo Bills are clicking. But as soon as things go wrong and Diggs is screaming at, his quarterback or his head coach, or he's slamming his helmet, or he's leaving, the game, or he's not even hanging out in the locker room after the playoff loss, he gets in his car and drives straight home. It just kind of, it feels immature. And I know Rick's, made good point that it just shows how much he cares. And I do think at the end of the day, this is an entertainment industry, and sometimes I do think that players, they may care more about the entertainment side of it, versus the team aspect, and they may want to be like, this would be a cool story, or maybe he thinks his way of showing the NFL that he cares is that he left and went straight home, really dramatic and things of that nature. But it's time to grow up, right? And that's just my take on it. It's time to be the team. Like if you're going to be miserable, you're going to be miserable together, right? You can't get too low, you can't get too high. And I think that may have been the humble pie that I'm not saying just Josh Allen or just Stefan Diggs needed. Anytime you're crowned Super Bowl champions before week 1 even kicks off, everybody needed humble pie. The fans, the players. This is coming from a guy that is cheering for Buffalo. Nobody should be crowned Super Bowl champions until they, at least make the Super Bowl. You got to at least go to one, right? So if you wanted to crown the Chiefs this year and say they're the team to beat, yeah, there's nothing arrogant about that. Okay. But we can't just pull new teams. Like, we can't do that with the Jets. I know it looks good on paper, but they have to go out there. We need to really see them, play together and things like that. And I really think the Bills, now they're not playing with the expectations. It may be what the team needed to kind of woosah and take a deep breath and go out there and just get back to what they were before the expectations. I'm worried about the Lions for the same thing. Right? The Lions played their best football when everybody forgot about them, when they were 1-6 going into week 8. That's when the Lions won, 7 of their last 9. And now you have the expectations. Now, how do they handle that? We'll have to see. I have a feeling Dan Campbell will be very good at not letting them get ahead of themselves. But at the end of the day, these are young, emotional kids, right? Some of them haven't even fully, matured yet. Testosterone's going crazy. So it'll be unique to see how, he manages that. But I do think the Bills, they may surprise a lot of people. They may go out there and they may play for each other without any expectations, and they may remind everybody who they are. And I think that is maybe one of the reasons they're on this list. But my personal thing is, if you have a young franchise quarterback, you should never be desperate to, you should always be desperate to win a Super Bowl. But the media, the people on the outside should, realize that your true Super Bowl window is, it's your entire career. 9.8, the New York Jets. And this is the one that I thought should be a 10. The Jets might not be in true Super Bowl or bust mode like their division rivals, talking about the Bills, but the blockbuster acquisition, and by the way, I totally disagree with that. They are in Super Bowl or bust mode, period, point blank. But the blockbuster acquisition of Aaron Rodgers has made this one of the most important seasons in franchise history. It's difficult to overstate how vital it is for Rodgers to stay on the field, play at a high level, and end New York's league's worst, North American professional sports worst playoff drought after 12 long years. So, the 12 years that the Jets have gone without making the playoffs is the most in North American professional sports. Wow. That is pretty impressive. And the team underneath the Jets right now are the Denver Broncos. I'm 99% sure, not 100, but I read that somewhere a while ago. It was like 2 years ago. Anyway, if he fails, it could mean the end of Robert Saleh's run as a head coach and potentially Joe Douglas's run as a manager too. Rodgers has said and done all the right things since the league-shaking April 24th trade, but none of that will matter if he can't lift this star-crossed franchise out of irrelevance and onto championship contention. It might be the greatest challenge yet for the four-time MVP. And they are definitely Super Bowl or bust. And this is 2 years, and you got Bill right here saying the same thing. I agree. This is make it or break it time for the Jets. 100% it is, because you just, if you're getting a quarterback, just like with Peyton Manning, right? When Denver got Peyton Manning, and I'm only using that because they're, I'm trying to think, is there old Tampa getting Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford going to the Rams. Anytime you have an older quarterback, I'm not even going to include Russell Wilson because he's not in his late 30s, right? But when you have a late 30s, 40-year-old quarterback, you are definitely in a Super Bowl window, right? And it is very short. And if you ask anybody that is a fan of the Jets if winning a divisional playoff game this year would be considered a successful season, they will say no. Okay? The best I will counter you is making it to the Super Bowl and losing. Outside of that, they have failed. The plan has been, let's take this guy that just won back-to-back MVPs, not last year, but 2 years before that, and let's take him out of Green Bay with, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, no matter how you feel about those guys, because I think they can ball. Let's take him out of this tiny market. Let's throw him in New York. And I said this already. This is so important because if Aaron Rodgers wins the Super Bowl this year, because the question's always been, why doesn't he have more Super Bowl rings? And we can point to Green Bay. We can point to a small town. We can point to no ownership. We can point. But if he goes to New York and doesn't win a Super Bowl, all of a sudden, there's going to be a lot of people that ran out of excuses, because we mostly agree that this New York Jets team has all the pieces, very similar to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the team that Tom Brady went to. Threats on the outside, a young, fast defense. They do have the pieces that they need. So, once again, disagree with the article. This is a Super Bowl or bust. I'll counter it at making it to the Super Bowl and losing. But besides those two, it is utter failure with Aaron Rodgers, the decision to go after him. And Steve said, what does Bill know anyways? He ain't never met no Frank Sinatra. Out of left field, just I love it. If you haven't met Frank Sinatra in person, then we shouldn't even be allowed to make football comments. So yeah, 9.8 on the scale. The Bills were rated at a 10. I would flip those, but I know what they're trying to say with the Bills. They're trying to say that, it's we've seen this before with teams that, the Colts were like this with Peyton Manning for a while, where you get urgent because the fans become restless. It's almost like a tease. It's not like the Packers where you have Aaron Rodgers, so there's always a chance, but let's be real, we're probably not going to win it. But who knows? He might surprise us. That's kind of the feeling when you have Aaron Rodgers on a mediocre team. But when you have like one of the best rosters in the NFL and you have an all-star quarterback, it's like, if we don't win the Super Bowl this year, it's our fault. And you go year and then another year and then another year and don't win the Super Bowl, the urgency becomes high. And I can see it from that aspect. I really can. So they have Buffalo, New York, and then Philadelphia. Very, very interesting. I do think it's important that Philly doesn't go backwards, which would mean winning a Super Bowl, right? Unless you say staying the same is just going to the Super Bowl. But I do believe that Super Bowl is what it was a great Super Bowl, by the way. Fantastic Super Bowl. Not a fan of the call at the end. That's besides the point. Overall, great Super Bowl. A lot of points, a lot of scoring. But I do think one of the things that stands out to me for this Super Bowl was it is a Super Bowl that felt like to me the Eagles were winning the entire game. And the fact that they lost, it was probably a really confusing couple weeks. Like I could see probably Jason Kelsey or Jalen Hurts just being like, "How the hell did we lose that game?" And Patrick Mahomes is just like, "Not so fast." I mean, you really, if you're a fan of the game, you might be baffled like I was. It was really, I mean, we know better. It's Patrick Mahomes, but it still felt like, you know, how did Mahomes pull it off again? That's really how it felt. So I do feel like if the Eagles were to make it back to the Super Bowl, they would probably win it. Um, but who knows? I think the Bengals are going to have a squad this year too. The Eagles are absolutely loaded. If not for a controversial defensive holding call late in the Super Bowl, they might be defending champions. They bring back nearly their entire core from last season's dominant group, and Jalen Hurts will enter his fourth season as a top MVP candidate entering his prime. Philadelphia seems to set up well for years to come, which should keep the team away from an exercise like this. And yet, it behooves these Eagles to seize the moment in 2023. If we were being kind, we would call the NFC unsettled. If we were being honest, it's a watered down landscape loaded with pretenders. The 49ers appear to be the only other conference superpower, and there's a scenario where the 49ers start Aaron Donald week 1, or Sam Donald. That would be crazy, Aaron Donald. The Eagles should contend in the Western Conference for years to come, but the runaway might not ever be as clear as it is right now. Totally agree with absolutely everything that was just said. The AFC is the division where it's almost unfair to put any AFC team on an urgency list when the AFC is as loaded as it is. The Bengals have a nasty team. Let's just forget about that. The best quarterback outside of Jalen Hurts in the NFC, what are you talking about? Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott? I'm serious. Daniel Jones, maybe. He had a good game against the Vikings. I'll toss him in the same category as Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett's got potential. Daniel Jones has potential, but the AFC is freaking loaded. And it's not even funny. I mean, if Russell Wilson, gets back to normal with Sean Payton, you got, Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Tua. I'm going to throw Tua on that list because if Tua wouldn't have gotten hurt, they would have had the best offense in the league last year. Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett. Now you got Bryce Young, or I'm sorry, CJ Stroud for the Texans. Who knows what Anthony Richardson's going to become? But forget about those guys. What about all those other guys I just named? I'm forgetting names. Justin Herbert. You can't even remember all of them, and then you remember one, and it's like that's a top 5 quarterback, and I couldn't even remember it because there's so many. And then you look at the NFC, and it's like Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins just high-fiving each other, right? What a time for them to be alive in this NFC. Because let's say that the NFC was the AFC. Who would Dak Prescott replace? Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo with the Raiders, but not one of the teams that just drafted a young future quarterback. I'm not taking Kirk Cousins over Bryce Young. I'm not taking Kirk Cousins over CJ Stroud. So, I mean, the NFC, they are putting a lot of mediocre quarterbacks in a starting role. And then you have Jalen Hurts, who I do believe is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL right now. And I do think it's Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes. And I don't even have them 1, 2, and 3. Well, Mahomes number 1, and then Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts. I'll go 1A, 1 or 2A, 2B. So they put their urgency at a 9.6 because if the Eagles don't win a Super Bowl this year, right, we can only anticipate that it will become more challenging as the years continue. Okay, and that's the whole point of why the Eagles are on this list right now. Bill said the Eagles are going to be a problem for a while, and I don't like it. Also said, how did we lose that game? Mahomes shovel pass, them an answer. And also that punt return. That punt return was a huge reason too. And Hurts is the best NFC quarterback by far, and it hurts my soul. I see what you did there, whether you meant to or not. We're going to pretend you did. The next team on this list, Cleveland Browns. And I get it. Let's read it because it's going to be the same thing I probably would say. I could go on for 3,000 words about why the Cleveland Browns shouldn't have gotten into business with this scandal-plagued Deshaun Watson. But what else needs to be said at this point? It's so funny. We've gotten to the point where we say that before every time, including myself. But it's almost like if you're going to say what else can be said, then why even say that? It's like, why don't we just talk about Deshaun Watson? It's like we feel guilty just talking about him like he's a regular dude because of, everything that happened. So, we all start with the same beginning now. I could go on about how, he shouldn't be in the NFL, but here we are. And then we get into our take. I wonder how long it's going to be before we all agree that we can just cut that first part out and just go right into the information. Anyway, the Watson is the face of the franchise now, and the Browns circled the 2023 season from the moment they pulled the trigger on the blockbuster trade with the Texans 2 Marches ago. Knowing the quarterback would likely face a significant suspension in 2022, Watson did indeed serve an 11-game ban last year, then performed poorly in his first 6 games for the Browns upon return, but he remains a talented, proven player who's just now heading into his age 28 season. Oh, wow. He feels to me like 31. He feels like 31 years old to me. Cleveland's general manager, Andrew Berry, has done a nice job building up talent around the quarterback, and Watson will undoubtedly be helped by a full offseason program and training camp without storm clouds of legal issues and league discipline hanging over his head. I expect Watson to play at a high level and make the Browns a contender in the AFC this season. But if, after all this, Watson flops or is merely a league average quarterback, heads might roll in the area. And I mean, it's exactly what I was going to say. So that's why I didn't. And they got that at a 9.0. So now we're into the 8s. And we got the Miami Dolphins. And when I tell you I'm not reading these, I'm really not. I want to say what I have to say about the teams first. Miami's roster is absolutely dominant. I mean, the trade that they did in the offseason last year when they got Bradley Chubb from Denver, that is the exact type of trade that you do before the deadline because you think that there's one player that if you get will take you over the top to win a Super Bowl. This is why the Rams got Von Miller the year before. They were like, you know what? We just need one more dog and we will win a ring. Okay. When Miami did that trade, they sent a very clear message to everybody. Whether we were listening or not, they were letting everybody know that they are contending for a Super Bowl this year. Well, the thing, what happened with Tua is unfortunate, right? It really is. They were still able to go to the playoffs. They were almost able to beat Buffalo. But, it's a sad story. It ended. Well, now let's fast forward into this offseason. Tua is going to play. Hopefully, he's going to be able to stay healthy. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are in their second year together. The chemistry will be better. And if that wasn't enough to just like sell you on everything, they bring in Vic Fangio. And Vic Fangio is the best defensive mind in the NFL, period. And almost anybody that knows football, all the NFL insiders know that Vic Fangio is really in a league over here. He's like the godfather of defense. His defense has been implemented in so many teams. I mean, it's with the 49ers. I mean, I could go down in a list, right? Well, the Miami Dolphins hiring Vic Fangio will turn that defense into a top 5 unit. The best accusation that Miami made this offseason is Vic Fangio. It's not a player, it's a coach. They already had a decent defense, good corners. They drafted another young corner. Then they trade for Jalen Ramsey. You're telling me that, and that's I know that they got Jalen Ramsey, and I'm still saying Vic Fangio is the best accusation that they got. This Miami team is one of the best rosters in the NFL. I would probably go, if I had to just pick a roster, to start, a franchise with right now, it would probably either be San Francisco or Miami. Miami is going to be a blast to watch next year, and they're going to probably win most of their football games. Now, they are in a very tough division, but besides those games, it's going to be tough to beat them. They're playing the Broncos week 3 after Denver starts with 2 easy games, easy-ish. They're playing the Raiders at home, and then they play the Commanders at home. So hopefully they'll be 2-0, knock on wood. But then week 3, I'm going to be at this game. They're playing at Miami. That is the first big test. And then I don't know how Miami starts their first 2 weeks, but knowing the division they're in, they're probably playing a really tough game. Whether it's going to be the Jets or the Bills, they're probably going to play one of those by week 3. So we're going to find out really quick who everyone is, right? I mean, it's not going to take long. There hasn't been too many changes, in my opinion. I mean, there's been minor changes, but do you remember the year before? It felt like every quarterback was switching. I can't remember it all right now, but I just remember last year feeling like, wow, there are so many unknowns. And, I think at least as a person that, you would put a friendly bet on a game, I feel like I have a good idea of who everyone is. Now, my wild cards are very hard to predict right now. The Giants are a wild card. And that's why I made a list. Crap. I forgot to pull it up. I actually wrote it on paper. I made a list of every team that has surpassed the expectations, like very surprising teams. Let me grab it really quick. Where did I put that? We're gonna hit this really quick at the end. So we're gonna go through these, and then I'm gonna go over the teams that had surprising seasons, teams just like the Giants. I can't believe I looked. I'm literally holding it and I still looked. Teams like the Giants. Um, and we're gonna basically come to an agreement who the Giants are and if they're going to be able to repeat their success. So, um, let's read Miami. On paper, the Dolphins have one of the most talented rosters in the entire league. The offense has speed that keeps opposing coordinators up at night, and the defense, now led by defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, approaches the Eagles in terms of depth and potential. Of course, all of this commendable work done by the Miami Brain Trust will be wasted if Tua Tagovailoa is unable to stay in the field. The team's new backup quarterback and former Jets folk hero Mike White, but staying the course with concussion-prone Tua with other options were available on the trade and free agent market. Hold on, what did I miss? The team has a new backup quarterback in Mike White, but staying the course with the concussion-prone Tua when other options were available on the trade and free agent market represents one of the greatest dice rolls in the NFL this season. So I guess they're just saying taking a chance on rolling with Tua versus trying to make a move for Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr or fill in the blank. The Dolphins make sense as a Super Bowl team, but there's also logic in picking them to finish last in the AFC East. Not really, man. Not last. I feel like you have to have Miami either first, second, or third. But I don't think you can justify last. I just really don't. This one I could understand. The San Francisco 49ers. And then there's one more team after that. It feels like San Francisco should have a Lombardi trophy or two to show for the past dozen years, doesn't it? The 49ers had those great teams under Jim Harbaugh, and now they're in the midst of a fine run with Kyle Shanahan at the controls. All in all, 6 playoff appearances in 12 years with 2 painful near misses in the Super Bowl. Is this the year the 21st century Niners get over the hump? I'd have them even higher in this exercise if not for the injury-related uncertainty at the quarterback position. When Brock Purdy makes his return from his elbow surgery, whether it be week 1 or further down the line, he'll inherit an offense with more talent and skill positions than any other team in football. The roster is well built on both sides of the ball. Shanahan remains one of the game's most gifted play callers. And as stated above in the Eagles breakdown, the conference appears largely undercooked. When you use your second draft pick on a kicker, you've basically acknowledged that your team is in Super Bowl or bust mode. Now is the time. Completely agree with everything. This roster is just way too talented to just what are they going to do every year? Just be really damn good and not win a Super Bowl? I mean, you got to get one of the year, but I don't know. I'd have to look at a lot of the contracts, but I could tell you right now, when you have that much talent on a team, you're not keeping everybody, right? You got a quarterback, that you haven't had to pay. You when you start paying everybody, you could say goodbye to this team. So if you can't get it done now, why should anyone believe that you're going to get it done in the future with less talented players? And the last team, and this one is just getting really freaking old, but I don't know. I'll always go over it because I do believe it makes America happy. The Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones turned 80 years old last October. 80. Man, Jerry Jones looks 80 though. Some people you find out that you're like they're 94. Wow, but Jerry Jones, he no disrespect to Jerry, but he does look like he's getting up there in the years. It's been decades since his team won something other than an NFC East. The longtime owner remains deeply involved with the day-to-day operations of his beloved Cowboys, a team that he hasn't reached the NFC Championship game since Wonderwall was on the charts. Wow. Today was going to be the day that they're going to give it back to you. I can play that one on the guitar. Jones is right to look at his team and see a legit contender that can put up a fight against the Eagles and perhaps come out of the NFC late January. Mike McCarthy's been on the sideline for back-to-back 12 winning seasons in Dallas, but the pressure is on for a deep playoff run. A disappointing campaign in the Big D could lead to big changes, and this is kind of the story that we've been hearing every single year, whether it was with um, Jason Garrett as the head coach, or we were talking about Tony Romo when we had Des Bryant. We as an NFL community had Des Bryant, who, by the way, had one of the more interesting exits of an NFL career. But this team just always is good. This is a team that you can always say they're pretty good, right? And the problem is pretty good teams don't win the Super Bowl. They don't. Pretty good teams never win the Super Bowl. Pretty good teams fight for a playoff spot. Pretty good teams maybe win a playoff game. Most of the time, not. So I feel like I have no reason to believe that there's anything different about the Cowboys. What, you think Brandon Cooks, is going to be the thing that tips it over? I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are going to be pretty good, right? They went 12-5 last season. I don't know if I have the Cowboys going 12-5 this year. And this is going to sound really crazy, but when the Dallas Cowboys were forced because Dak Prescott got hurt week 1 against the Bucs, when they brought in their backup, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he had to play the first 6 weeks of the season. He turned the Cowboys over to Dak with a 5-1 record. I'm pretty sure he won every game he played. So I just think there's somebody. I just think that there's something there that needs to be uncovered. I understand, like, sometimes backups come in and have beginner luck. We saw Matt Castle come in for Tom Brady. Jimmy Garoppolo came in for Tom Brady. We even saw the drive that happened with the Chiefs when Patrick Mahomes injured his ankle. Was it Chad Henne? Went on a 99-yard touchdown drive in the playoffs. I mean, sometimes backups just come in and they got, a little bit of, just, a new face, a new energy. But, Dak was just kind of careless with the ball, man. He was throwing so many picks. And I just wonder, when you look at this roster, like, I wonder if Aaron Rodgers or, any of those AFC quarterbacks that I named earlier were, under center for the Cowboys, would they have won a Super Bowl, in the last 5 years? And I think maybe. KC in the chat, what's going on? Cooper Rush, thank you for reminding me that is the guy's name that I was trying to think. And then Bill said Brock Purdy and George Kittle are the only guys that could get me to root for the 49ers. What about John Lynch? John Lynch, the general manager. You got to love John Lynch. Kyle Shanahan, longtime father, Mike Shanahan. There's a lot of guys on that team. Like the 49ers, I always root for them. They're so intertwined with the Denver Broncos that it's hard not to. Even Christian McCaffrey. His father, Ed McCaffrey, played for the Broncos at wide receiver. So this is what I was looking up. So I was trying to figure out how to really go about it, because every year we know that there's going to be new playoff teams, right? Now, I do think the AFC is going to have less new teams in the playoffs than the NFC. Because the AFC has so many all-star quarterbacks. And I think the teams that have the all-star quarterbacks, there's less of a margin for them to miss the playoffs as, there is for Kirk Cousins to miss the playoffs for the Vikings, for example. So, there were teams last year that made the playoffs that we were not expecting. To be honest, if the Jets had, anybody besides Zach Wilson under center for the entire year, they probably would have gotten close to a playoff game. They were fighting for one late in the season with Zach Wilson. I mean, they literally couldn't be any worse. So, of a quarterback to start last year. So maybe Russell Wilson. I can't believe I have to say that. So let's look at a couple teams here. The 2018 Houston Texans. The Texans rebounded from a 4-12 season, and they go 11-5 the next year. So they go from 4-12 to 11-5, and that was the season that they were pretty much riding the talents of J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson. So I'm trying to see which teams do I believe are going to make this kind of a jump. Okay. So then 2018, they go 4-12. 2019, they made the playoffs going 11-5. And then 2020, they went 10-6. So I have found some kind of common denominator, and that is the teams that had a franchise quarterback, their successful season, was not a fluke. And I'll give you an example. Okay. The 2012 Colts. They're 2-14 because Peyton Manning goes out with a neck injury. They draft Andrew Luck. They go 11-5, and Andrew Luck was the freaking man. So guess what? The next year they won at 11-5. It was the start of a dynasty, right? It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just one good year in the middle of a bunch of bad years. Let me give you one that doesn't have a great quarterback that is a fluke. The 2018 Chicago Bears. I'm sorry, Rick. Matt Nagy wins Coach of the Year. Mitch Trubisky playing effectively. The Chicago Bears go from being 8-8 to, well, I think it was 10-6. I forgot to write it down. And actually go to the playoffs. That year will just be remembered as the double doink year. But then the Bears haven't made the playoffs since. Okay, why? Because Mitch Trubisky's not really a franchise quarterback. He's not. So this is what I when I'm proceeding with caution with the Giants. Because is Daniel Jones the caliber that Deshaun Watson was in 2018, that Andrew Luck was in 2012? Let me give you another fluke. The 2017 Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay. From 2011 to 2020, the Jaguars topped 6 wins in a season just one time. That is very, very bad. And they loaded up on free agents in 2017. They got Malik Jackson, Calais Campbell, AJ Boyu. That's when they were known as Saxonville. They were the number 1 defense. You know, the Duval mania. Blake Bortles was their quarterback, right? But they had the best defense. So they went 10-6, and they fought really hard against the Patriots and almost went in to the Super Bowl. But it was Blake Bortles. So there it is. There's your 1 year. Okay. There's your glimpse of glory, but then it's gone. Now, what are the New York Giants on? Now, I'm just using history. I'm trying to take my opinion out of it. Where do the Giants line up closer with? A team like the Chicago Bears in 2018, the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2017, or are they actually building something like the 2018 Texans when they got Deshaun Watson playing at a high level? And that's when it kind of comes back on us. But I do believe that when there are teams that have very surprising years, like how the Jets were at the midpoint, how the Seahawks were last year, we have to decide what category we're going to put that in. Why? Because we have to try to predict the future. That's what we do as fans. So what category do the New York Giants go in? Because I do believe that they are probably the most surprising team of the year besides the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks are another team that is worth answering that question. Is there a team that is in this surprisingly good conversation that just solved their quarterback problem? Well, it may be this year right? Where the Jets do. Maybe the Broncos get to that point with Sean Payton. But I do feel as of right now, I don't know enough about Daniel Jones or Geno Smith to be like, no, man, they're set. That was legit. They're good. Write it down. They're going to be good again. I do feel a little scared because historically, we do know that teams will pull back. There are teams that are going to be bad that get better, and there's going to be teams that were good last year and they're going to come back, and there's going to be teams that have the exact same type of a season. Probably the Chiefs, the Bengals. So I do think the Giants drafted really well. I do. But I just need to see Daniel Jones one more year. Like, I just need one more year. Like, if he can lead his team to a 10-7 season and make the playoffs, I will stop doubting Daniel Jones. I will. But I just can't throw him into, the elite conversation. And mostly throughout history, if it's not an elite quarterback, your 1 year of success is a fluke. That is that's been true in my entire life. I mean, the Broncos were good for 4 years because we had Peyton Manning. Before that, you had to go all the way back to 2005. We had Jake Plummer. Went to the AFC Championship game. That's it. There was nothing like before that, they were really good, and after that, it was just a fluke. It just happened 1 year. It worked. Bill said, in Daboll, I trust my guys have been mismanaged for years. Keeping maintainable and Kofa as our coordinators is out, the number 1 draft pick. This is the first year we've had the same offensive coordinator 2 years in a row. He still needs to grow, but I believe we never had the elite quarterback, and we got 4 rings. Very good point. Very, very good point. Because the Giants' success may not be because Daniel Jones is playing at a high level, but it may just be that they're coached really well. Now, and if they are being coached really well, I expect the Giants to be better. Okay, because if they were able to be that good and the coaching is the main driver of this team, like let's say you rank it out and you're like, at quarterback we're B minus, coaching A plus. That means that is kind of the heartbeat of your team. If it's your coaching that you guys are leaning on the most, then I would be able to test that because year 2, your coaches have been, just like you said, second year in a row as an offensive coordinator, more time in the system. Daboll knows his place around the building. He's established his, dominance in the locker room when he walks around. Whatever the case is, the guys know that they can trust him. There's been some kind of rapport built with the players. Like, if coaching is what the Giants are leaning on the most, then they have to be better this year, in my opinion. So I think that is the question that is going to be answered. Steve said, I agree. I'd like to see Daniel Jones put up one more decent season before saying he deserves to move on as starter for not the Giants, but any other team. Yeah, and I think that if I were if I were a fan of a team that had a year like Daniel Jones just had with the Giants, I would be a believer in Daniel Jones. Dude, this is the guy that believed in Drew Lock because we ended the season 4-1 with him as a starter. And then we go into free agency and picked up Melvin Gordon. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, you guys don't even know Drew Lock is the real deal. Like, I understand when you get a little bit of success, you are never going to be like, hey, that guy's a faker. It's like biting the hand that feeds you. It's like, how could you be ungrateful? That guy just got you to the playoffs and won a game. But sometimes the outside world can have a totally different perspective where we're looking at it and we're like, damn, $40 million. Daniel Jones $40 million is a lot of money. And I know, Bill, you can pull out of that. But I do think that Daniel Jones is playing under a little bit of pressure this year because he has got to go out there and he's got to prove that he is worth that kind of money in a division with the Philadelphia Eagles, and you had the Dallas Cowboys, right? I think a successful year for the Giants is beating the Cowboys at least once and finishing number 2 in your division and winning one playoff game. If you can do those 3 things, then I do believe Daniel Jones will be the long-term starter. But I do think you have to do all 3 of those, and you can't miss one of them. You can't lose twice in a row to the Cowboys. You got to beat them. It's been like I don't know how many years. I'm busy counting my own. 6 years since we beat the Chiefs, 7 years, whatever it is. So, but I do know it's been a couple years since Daniel Jones has been able to, or the Giants have been able to beat the Cowboys. Steve said even Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl ring. So I appreciate you indulging my Giants talk. LOL. DJ is not Mahomes, Burrow, etc. He ain't Manning. He's good. He's a good cog and a big machine. I agree on the division stuff. Yeah, and the other team is the Seahawks, which is kind of an open-ended question. But when the Seahawks had the year they had last year, surprised the entire world, comeback player of the year. Pete Carroll is obviously a better coach than any of us really thought. And then Russell Wilson sucks. So we're like, was Pete Carroll the glue? Well, let's take a second and realize that most of the sports media has been saying that the Seahawks are going to pull back. There's no way Geno Smith is going to go out there and do it again, right? And I would caution against thinking that because the Geno Smith was throwing the ball a lot. He had, I've gone through the numbers on here. He had over 4,000 passing yards. He had one of the best deep ball QBRs in the entire league. If you had a quarterback that just was kind of, that they were playing really good defense and, they were averaging 18.5 points a game and they won 10 games, lost 7. And then you're like, I don't think they're going to do that again because I think the defense might be a little worse. It seemed like anybody could have went in at quarterback. No, the Seahawks offense was scoring like 40 points a game. Excuse me, like 40 points a game. So, not 40, but there were a couple games there where you're like, damn, Geno Smith is like, he's got 48 points. The Lions game stands out to me. So it's hard to say something's a fluke when you're seeing it in such a raw manner, right? It's not like they were just running the ball the entire time. Like, don't let Geno throw it. He'll throw a pick like they were doing with the Giants with Daniel Jones. That's what Brian Daboll was doing for the first however many weeks. And then teams were like, we're just going to focus on stopping Saquon Barkley, and you're going to have to make Daniel Jones beat us with his arm. And then when that time came around, they did. And Daniel Jones did beat them with his arm, right? But we didn't have that with Geno Smith. He was out there beating teams with his arms and his legs, and they were running the ball effectively. They were just overall well-rounded team, and now they've added one of the best wide receivers out of Boston College. Can't remember his name right now, but then they also add Witherspoon, the best cornerback in the draft out of Illinois. So I mean, they had one of the best drafts in the NFL. What they pulled off in the first round is pretty remarkable because of the Russell Wilson trade. And I just can't get myself to believe that the Seahawks, I understand the, like if this was a poker table, it does feel like it's time to take your money and run if you're a Seahawks. It's like, dude, eventually, you're going to run out of your luck. The tables are going to turn. Like it lasted while it lasted. I do feel the temptation to do that because, we don't like being wrong. But at the same time, I just don't feel like I've seen enough to really believe that the Seahawks couldn't be the same team. I'm not saying that they're going to be, I'm not even saying they're going to win their division. But to say that the Seahawks could be exactly like they were last year, this year, that's kind of where I'm at right now, to be completely honest. Casey said, I agree. Both quarterbacks deserve more playing time. And Steve said, he's shown great improvement as a leader by showing more maturity all season. I'm rooting for the guy this season to do well after disliking him before because of his behavior. Yeah, and it is really cool seeing, young men turn into men before your eyes and just um the way he carries himself is a veteran. He's a veteran. He's gotten there. And I do think that that is, why he's able to find so much success is because it's everything. It's your mind being right. It's your emotions. Like Baker's another guy, man, that he may have to really kind of lean into the Geno maturity in order for some of his raw talents to actually manifest into something special. Or he's just going to be a gunslinger that can throw the football over a mountain, but never was able to get a job because his ego is too big. Um, but that is a totally different conversation for another time. But I hope you guys like this new setup. I hope you enjoy it. I'm gonna rewatch, just like the first 5 minutes of it to see how it looks and everything like that. But if you guys are new to this channel, you can hit the like and subscribe button to Star Six Media on YouTube. You can also follow me at Twitter at FTBLONLYPODCAST, along with my partner, my co host, who will be back soon. This guy is my everything. And now Rick, ANDNOWRICK. And if you guys ever have any topics or any episode ideas that you would like the episodes to be themed on, please put it in the comments. Send me a private message on Twitter. Let me know what you guys really want me to dive into. It's the off season, so all ideas are welcomed. We actually had some of our some of our OGs in here today. Bill, KC, Steve, Aaron. My girlfriend was in here. She's upstairs, but she was in here. You guys all coming in here. I totally just love that. I know it's been busy. It's summertime. Families coming. People are traveling. But it was nice to have you guys in here today. So thank you guys for coming in. And I will see you all super soon. Until then, go Broncos. See ya.